Hi everyone, my name is Ethan Brown. I'm a peer scholarship advisor in the Charles Center, and today I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what the Fulbright scholarship entails. So we're going to go over information, timelines, and some administrative support from William & Mary that you can seek throughout the Fulbright process. So first, what is the Fulbright? Wonderful question. So the Fulbright is a competitive national scholarship that is focused primarily on two different grant types. There are academic research grants and English teaching assistant grants. So while they're both still run by the Fulbright National Commission, there's still two entirely separate grant types that encompass very different experiences in the host country. So whether you're doing an academic research grant or an ETA grant, there are some broad benefits that are basically the same. So you can get round-trip transportation to and from the home country, and then some form of stipend for room and board. And then some programs, depending on what country you're going to, will include additional enrichment opportunities, allowances for books and other educational supplementary materials, as well as additional language programs that you can participate in country. So once again, regardless of whether you're interested in pursuing a research grant abroad or if you're interested in teaching English abroad through Fulbright, there are some things just to kind of keep in mind for both award types as you're considering or weighing which one to pursue. So one is that you have to have recommenders for both Fulbright grants. Although for the academic research grant, you have to have a letter of affiliation, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a couple minutes. But keep in mind, start thinking about some professors over the summer that you might be interested in reaching out to and perhaps asking them if they'd be willing to write you a letter of recommendation. Another thing to keep in mind are that both academic research and ETA grants require a personal statement. Personal statements I'll also go into a little bit more later on, but personal statements are a little bit tricky to write. They're a little bit different than essay writing that we're used to in William & Mary, so it's always good to get a head start on those because they can be a little bit demanding. Another big thing to keep in mind with the Fulbright is that there are very different language eligibility requirements for the different countries that you can travel to. So while a country like Spain, you're, I think, required to have like an intermediate knowledge of the Spanish language if you're interested in going to another country. For example, I'm interested in applying to Bosnia and Herzegovina for a Fulbright grant for myself. After William & Mary, they do not have any language requirements because the language that is spoken primarily in Bosnia, which is Serbo-Croatian or Bosnian, there's really not too much education with that in the United States that's readily accessible. So Fulbright doesn't really require you to have any prior language knowledge, although it would be considered a plus if you did have it. So kind of keep in mind and take into account what your own language skills are when you're considering which country you might be interested in applying to. Another big thing about Fulbright is that you can only apply to one country, so it's not like you can apply to Bulgaria and France and Spain and submit several different applications. You have to choose one country that you feel the most passionately about and then fill out all of the application materials based on that one country. And then another thing to keep in mind with Fulbright is that we have an institutional endorsement process for this scholarship. What that means is that there's a chance for you to get William & Mary's endorsement, basically saying this is a qualified candidate who would go on to do a wonderful job if selected for a Fulbright. It's not required that you have that endorsement from William & Mary before submitting your final application to Fulbright, but it is definitely a thing we highly encourage all applicants to consider because it's not that much more work and it gives you that seal of approval from William & Mary, which is obviously something we are all interested in having as students here. Just for some broad eligibility requirements, so Fulbright requires that applicants are U.S. citizens or nationals, and you must have a bachelor's degree at the time of your departure to the host country. So if you're a senior who just finished, or a senior, or if you're a junior, if you're a junior who just finished your junior year at William & Mary, it is okay for you to be applying to the Fulbright because by the time that you would go in fall 2021, you will have graduated from William & Mary, so that is totally okay. And it's also accessible to graduates. So if you've already graduated from William & Mary, you are also allowed to apply to the Fulbright. If you're a freshman or a sophomore right now, though, unfortunately, you will have to wait a little bit. But we would recommend that you apply for the UK Fulbright Institutes, which are summer programs. So if you are interested in the Fulbright Commission, but you're a little bit younger, definitely check those out because they're really cool opportunities. Fulbright also recommends that applicants have less than 6 months of experience either living or working in the country that they're applying to. So let's say you lived in Italy for 2 years when you were in high school and now you are interested in applying for an English teaching assistantship there. Fulbright says that you might be at a little bit of a disadvantage since you've already had a lot of the cultural enrichment opportunities that would be available to you if you were selected for an ETA. So kind of keep that in mind, that you want to have a balance of maybe having a little bit of experience and expertise in the country or region that you're interested in, but having too much might actually work to your disadvantage. And then, as I mentioned on the previous slide, language requirements for each country are going to depend based on the country you're going to, as well as the grant that you're interested in. So just make sure you're taking into account all of those factors. Now looking at the components of what an application looks like if you are interested in applying for a research grant. So it's one of the two main types of Fulbrights you can pursue. So there's obviously like the recommendations that I talked about earlier. You have to submit transcripts, information about the specific program you're interested in. But broadly, these are the three things that we really encourage that applicants start thinking about the summer before they end up applying for Fulbright. So the first part is the statement of grant purpose. So that's the thing that basically is going to walk Fulbright through the process of your research project that you're proposing. So you have to go through your timeline of your research, your methodology, your data sources, the feasibility, resources that you hope to have at your disposal, previous expertise and experience conducting high-level academic research. You have to fit a lot of that all into 2 pages. So if it wasn't difficult enough already to kind of come up with a really cool and engaging research idea, it's also an exercise in creativity to come up with how to fit all of that into 2 pages. So if you have an idea for what you would be interested in pursuing for a year abroad for the Fulbright academic grant, that is awesome. But we would definitely recommend that you try to take the summer kind of fleshing through, like, what would a timeline look like? How long are you going to spend on each individual aspect of that project? What archival research or what data would you want to have access to that you think would make this research feasible? Going through all of that stuff now, so that way when it comes time to actually write the essays, you already know very clearly what you're interested in. That'll make fitting it into 2 pages a whole lot easier. Beyond the statement of grant purpose, we also have the personal statement, which I alluded to a little bit earlier. So the personal statement is where you kind of get to show Fulbright what makes you unique as an applicant. So you have 1 page to portray what experiences have impacted your academic and personal development and how you think that all of those experiences will best complement your efforts while living and working abroad for that year. So this is kind of a flexible exercise in kind of piecing together different portions of your personal and academic life and creating a compelling narrative for why you are a special Fulbright applicant. But it's also totally okay and or completely encouraged to kind of acknowledge what lack of experiences you might have. So let's say you're interested in applying to pursue research for a year in Taiwan. You could be pretty upfront with Fulbright and saying, I frankly didn't have the financial resources to travel to East Asia during my time at William & Mary, but I did do an independent study in Williamsburg about some cultural trend in Taiwan that I was really passionate about. That's okay. Fulbright isn't going to automatically disqualify you just because you haven't had as much, hands-on experience working in the country. That's okay. As long as you own up and kind of say how the things that you have done do fit into that experience, that will be totally sufficient. And then the last thing you have to have for the academic grant is the letter of affiliation. So this is basically if you're applying for an academic grant, you have to have reached out to an institution, and specifically a professor or an academic individual affiliated with an institution in that country, basically saying, I'm going to help and mentor this person if they do get selected for Fulbright, and I will make sure that their research grant is completed. So this is a big thing that we really encourage people to start thinking about this summer before applying, because it can be a little bit tricky to find someone who's willing to look after your research and who is, in the country that you're interested in. So obviously, it's kind of difficult to come up with that. If I was considering applying for a research grant in Bosnia, and I was like, I don't really know off the top of my head any academics I could reach out to in country and getting them to supervise my research. But it is totally okay to cold email people. There have been plenty of success stories of people who knew very clearly what they wanted to do, did some creative Googling, and then found a couple of professors that they actually reached out to and asked, hey, I'm an American applicant with XYZ experiences. I'm really interested in pursuing a Fulbright in your country at your institution. Would you be willing to have a dialogue with me about what that could look like? And, more frequently than not, a lot of professors abroad will be interested in that, because if you are interested and competitive for a Fulbright, it shows that you're going to be able to contribute to their department and their research in the host country. So definitely don't be afraid to cold email. That is totally all right. And don't feel like you can't apply for the academic grant just because you don't have a myriad of, in-country resources that you could be working with. Just have that as something to kind of be thinking about and processing through in the next couple months. Oh, I'm talking quickly. So now for the ETA, kind of different grant components, a little bit different. We still have the broad statement of grant purpose and the personal statement, but they are a little bit switched up, since obviously teaching English is going to look a lot different than going and conducting your own independent high-level research. So for the statement of grant purpose, you really are encouraged to brainstorm specific ideas that you have to help your students learn English in the classroom. So describe specific qualifications and experiences that you may have had either working with children or working with the region that you think prepare you best for working as an ETA. Another thing that you're expected to kind of address in your statement of grant purpose are personal attributes that prepare you for living in the host country. So if you're flexible, hardworking, and you have experiences that really highlight those skills and traits, this is a great opportunity for you to let Fulbright know. Another thing that we always encourage people to look at in the statement of grant purpose is kind of allude to some form of host country engagement, which I'll get to in a couple minutes. So another second component of the ETA is the personal statement. So the personal statement is kind of similar to how it looks for the academic research grant. So it is basically a short biography about a page long that is specifically relating to how you and your aspirations fit in neatly and complement the Fulbright program that you've applied. So whether it's going through and looking at, when I was 10, I always had a passion for this, or at William & Mary, I have a clear track record of doing this. You really want to be looking through your personal and academic lives and records to be finding things that fit in neatly with why you're applying for what you're applying for. And then third, host country engagement. So another part of the ETA application process is that you have to brainstorm a way that you will hope to, kind of foster community engagement while you're in the host country. So you kind of have to come up with some project that you're hoping to work with your students and co-teachers on. So take time to think about this a little bit early too. This is something we always recommend people take the summer and kind of brainstorm and think about, because this can get kind of repetitive. A lot of people are, they frequently will save the host country engagement project as kind of a latter part of their application process. And that often can result in engagement projects that maybe aren't as unique as the applicant and maybe don't show as much interest as we would like to see. So they can get a little bit repetitive, so make sure that you're kind of thinking about that engagement now. This is a great way to stand out. If you have a strong community engagement project that it's clear that you have expertise working on projects like that and you have interest in pursuing it, that's definitely going to be something that Fulbright will take note of. So personal statements. So this is just a super broad overview to personal statements because they are tricky but fun, as the caption says. So these are the three main pointers I would say that out of 3 years of working with Fulbright applicants, I think are the things that I would most encourage people to be thinking about. So first, focus on what makes you unique and try to avoid relying on cliches. Fulbright is reading thousands of essays a year, and you want to make sure that they read yours and immediately are going to remember it. So rather than saying just a laundry list of things that you've worked on at William & Mary or beforehand, try to think about ways that you can show that flair in a more creative way. So rather than just saying a laundry list and a resume, I took Russian for 4 years. Try to think about some unique way that Russian has impacted your personal life or your development. So I knew I was in love with the Russian culture when I started dreaming in Russian. Obviously, that's pretty kitschy, but it's a little bit more impactful than just kind of having a laundry list of things that, many other applicants could also put on their application as well. I would also say to get a little quirky. The best essays are ones that are going to integrate your academic enrichment opportunities with the way that you've grown as a person while at William & Mary. So be vulnerable and share personal stories, even if they're a little bit funny. That can go a long way in really humanizing you as an applicant and making you stand out and not seem like one resume in a stack of 100. And then lastly, be confident. A lot of times when I go through Fulbright essays and read them with applicants, people are always referring to the Fulbright as an if. If I receive the Fulbright, then I will go on and do this. You want to illustrate that you're confident in your abilities to win a Fulbright. We're not encouraging you to be braggy, but saying when I receive the Fulbright, I know it's going to fit into these long-term professional goals I have. Self-assurance is a good thing. So make sure that you're always, presenting yourself in the most confident of lights and making sure that you've clearly thought out how Fulbright's going to fit in with your long-term academic and professional goals. So lastly, this is just kind of a timeline about what the Fulbright application process looks like. So right now it is May 12th. So we're right at the beginning of summer 2020. So the things we would first encourage you to do, you can meet online with a peer scholarship advisor. There are about 12 of us in the Charles Center. And we are trying to still do work over the summer over email or over Zoom. So just get in touch with us. I have our link on the next page. But if you reach out to the peer scholarship advisors, you'll get matched up with one who can help you look over your essays, help you brainstorm stuff to be putting on your application, all of that good stuff. And if you're pursuing an academic grant, maybe this is the time to start researching potential affiliations that then you can then reach out to. So then when we get back to campus, hopefully when we get back to campus in August, a couple weeks after that, in early September, we're going to have the William & Mary endorsement stage. This is not required, but highly encouraged. So usually in early September, we ask that you've completed your application and you submit it to William & Mary. And then we'll have campus interviews with all applicants that are conducted by our head of national scholarships, Lindsay Love. And those are great because usually, since we don't have restrictions on the amount of applicants to Fulbright we're allowed to recommend, usually if you have a well thought out, application, you'll go ahead and get the nod from William & Mary. And having those campus interviews really allow you to flesh out what you want to, maybe edit or tweak in your application before you finally submit it to Fulbright in October, because you'll have about a month in between submitting it to William & Mary and submitting it to Fulbright where you can go back and make important edits. And then the final date where you have to have everything submitted is October 13th, 2020 at 5 p.m. This is when the final application has to be submitted. This will sneak up on you because it's only about a month and a half into when classes have started. So this is why we really encourage that people start working on Fulbright during the summer, because getting a head start now is going to make your life a heck of a lot easier when we get to it in fall 2020. So where do I go from here? If you're interested in the Fulbright, that is super exciting. We would love to work with you this summer. So you can go ahead to that link, and that's where you can contact the PSAs for an online consultation. You can also receive that link by going to the Peer Scholarships website on William & Mary. Or you can also contact Lindsay Love or Christine Aznara, who are our administrative coordinators within the Charles Center, who can either answer your questions or get you in touch with a peer scholarship advisor who can help you start the essay drafting and application process. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and have a great day.